Hello everybody and welcome back to another Doctor Who product review. In today's review I'm going to be taking a look at the latest release as a part of the Doctor Who B&M exclusive action figure series. In today's review, the first set from the 2022 line, and it is the Robot Collector set, featuring a variant of the Season 12 4th Doctor alongside the one and only K1 robot. The recommended retail for this collector set is £19.99 and it is available throughout the UK now. So taking a look at the packaging for the Robot Collector set, this is of course an ever so slightly different shape to usual to cater for the fact that the K1 robot is ever so slightly larger compared to your usual Capture Options 5-inch action figure. The bottom of the box states that this is the Robot Collector set from the 4th Doctor story, which aired in 1974, and then we have the usual limited edition B&M sticker. The standard stylish TARDIS graphic can be seen on the sides of the box, as well as the stacked variation of the current Doctor Who logo. The rest of the packaging is exactly the same to usual, the same details repeated on the outside of the box, of course the company details on the base, and the preview window does of course extend around to the side, as well as at the top of the usual features information. The usual design continues around to the back of the box, including the title of the set once again, and some additional company information at the bottom. To accompany the text, we have two rather nice pictures of the figures outside of the box. Something that is brilliant to see and perfect for the collector's market, we have a little story synopsis for the 4th Doctor serial. It's great to see that once again, in keeping with the theme of the previous B&M exclusive collector sets, this set does indeed have its own unique backdrop, really aiming this set once more to the collector's market. I can't lie, it's not the most exciting backdrop in the world. I do believe it is the basement that K1 is stored in throughout the story. The backdrop makes for a great display option, in particular if you decide to keep this set within the packaging. This is a really lovely display box and gives a great look at the two figures. The Robot Collector set acts as a great opportunity to get two considerably rare figures and add them to your classic series collection. With a considerable amount of paint application changes, this set is also great for those who have the initial release. A lot of reviews are undoubtedly going to be taking a look at the K1 robot first, as he is after all the main attraction of the set, so I'm going to shake things up a little bit and take a look at the 4th Doctor first. This figure initially came out as a part of the first ever wave of Doctor Who Classic Series action figures and has had subsequent re-releases since then. In a rather similar manner to that of the recent 5th Doctor variant figures, this version of the Season 12 4th Doctor has a rather different colour scheme compared to the initial release to make it more screen accurate, using much more vibrant colours, overall really making the figure pop. What we pretty much have of this figure is roughly the same idea and colour palette as the initial figure, however all of those colour shades have been brought up to make it look a lot more vibrant. White shirt which really stands out, and in the very centre we have the addition of the tie. This is a lovely light vibrant green, and over the top of this we have a really beautiful design with the inclusion of black and white bands. This is something that generally wasn't present on the initial release, it was just one block colour, however it really stands out and really brings the costume to life. I really love this, in particular across the top of the shirt. The patterning on the cardigan underneath is really intricate and again has a similar pattern to that of the initial release, however the checkered design now appears to be one standard block cream as opposed to the series of creams and yellows seen on the initial release. Bending back the scarf slightly to take a look at that brilliant jacket underneath, again this has been given a vibrant paint upgrade and overall it really does stand out. Lots of lovely sculpting details on this to make it look like material, so you have lots of creasing lines, but what I also really love is the paint application of the buttons here running across the side of the jacket and even on the pockets as well. Even the side pockets have a few details, including the button once again and a black trim running along the top. None of these details are present on the initial release. Moving around to the back, again we have an absolutely lovely design with lots of creases within the coat itself, as well as a number of material stitching lines. In particular I love these two coming up the side of the spine here, just to give the coat a little bit more depth. Due to the lighter shade being used on the jacket, the elbow patches do stand out quite a lot more compared to the initial release. These have been detailed with a lovely light brown paint application, and then we even have the detailing of the buttons on the cuffs of the jacket, once again a lovely sharp golden paint application. Of course the 4th Doctor wouldn't be the 4th Doctor without the inclusion of his trademark scarf. This sits on the neck of the 4th Doctor rather naturally and has lots of vibrant colour. Do believe that the colour arrangement may have changed ever so slightly on the scarf, but generally you get the idea. One thing to note, however, is we do tend to have the block colour, and that is pretty much it. We don't really have a wash over the top or anything like that, which generally gives the scarf a rather fresh appearance, which I suppose makes sense given that this figure is from the 4th Doctor's debut story. Colouring of the scarf is actually printed on the back as well, which is something that was absent from some of the earlier 4th Doctor releases, and the scarf does appear to be made out of a stronger plastic, meaning that it is much harder to bend. Because there is simply so much colour going on with this figure, I most certainly recommend going into store and actually getting this product by hand if you can, just to check the paint application, because I've seen a few dodgy Tom Bakers, especially when it comes to the colouring on the scarf. Moving further down the costume now to the 4th Doctor's trousers, basically have roughly the same idea compared to that of the initial release. However, a few further details have been applied to really make this figure pop. The general base colour of the trousers is a lovely lighter grey, however the main detailing that I love is over the top of this, almost marbled textured pattern, again really bringing the trousers to life, actually making them look like a material, as opposed to that block lighter grey that we've seen on the initial release. Paint application and the sculpt really work together across the entirety of this figure. We have a little bit of creasing at the bottom of the trousers there to give a baggy appearance, and then we have the shoes, again a lovely intricate sculpting detail given a kind of light yellow paint application with a very thick dirty wash applied over the top. I do believe that these are ever so slightly lighter compared to the initial release, and this is nicely topped off with even the addition of a black paint application at the bottom there, representing the sole of the shoe. So now moving up to the very top of the figure to take a look at that likeness to that of Tom Baker, and the sculpt is absolutely excellent. Now I love the design choice here because we have the season 12 body, and then we have the inclusion of the solemn hatted head, which is different to the initial wave 1 release where we had two different heads. We had the solemn head with no hat, then we had the hatted head that was smiling. So with this figure we have again a nice bit of variety and neutral overall representation of the 4th Doctor's costume without having that rather absurd smiley face. So the paint application is lovely and sharp with lots of small details. In particular, I love the eyes. I think that these have been picked out nicely. We have the eye whites and the iris, and then equally what really sets this figure apart is that black line which has been used to represent the eyelids there and the eyelashes at the very top. The eyebrows haven't been too overdone, and the same can be said for the lips as well, some rather natural paint application on those. And then turning around to the side, with the addition of the 4th Doctor's sideburns. Unlike some of the previous releases, these have been painted the same colour as the rest of the hair. Of course, some of the previous releases do infamously have the ginger sideburns. Sculpting of the curls is as excellent as ever. Lots of lovely detailing on this. Of course, curls, strands of hair going all the way around the entirety of the head, excellently emphasised with a lighter grey wash. We have the addition of the hat. This is a lovely lighter brown. I'm going to bet that this is ever so slightly lighter compared to the initial version of the 4th Doctor. The addition of the little bow there on the side as well, along with a few creases within the hat just to make it sit on the 4th Doctor's head more naturally. So overall, I am really happy with this head sculpt. It looks excellent. So in summary, I really do love this version of the 4th Doctor. I think that even though it uses basically exactly the same parts as that initial version that came out all the way back in 2008, what they've done with the paint application on this figure has really sold it as something new. And when I first seen the announcement of this set, I was really excited for this figure alone, because we have loads of lovely paint application, and I think that on the shelf this 4th Doctor will really stand out. So here he is in all of his glory. Of course, the main attraction of the set is of course the K1 robot. Initially a collect and build as a part of the first ever wave of Doctor Who Classic Series action figures, and here he is fully formed with some brand new paint application changes, making him look ever so slightly shinier compared to the initial release. Much like the 4th Doctor, is that they've revised the colour palette to make it appear a little bit more accurate to what we actually seen on screen. So some of those more vibrant reds seen on the initial 2008 release have now been replaced with a metallic pinky colour on the midsection as well as the visor. The other major paint revision is basically every single silver section on K1 from the bottom to the very top, where we basically have a metallic silver which has been used, which overall gives the appearance of the K1 robot being much shinier compared to the initial release. Basically this is the same paint application which is used within the history of the Daleks collector sets for the silver 60s Daleks. Now sadly I am going to bring in a little bit of a critique early on, but something that a number of collectors have brought up, and now including myself, is structurally this new version of K1 isn't as strong as the initial release, or at least it doesn't feel as stable. Now I compared this one to the one that I have at home, and overall that one was structurally a lot easier to stand up, and the reason why I'm bringing this up now is because I'm going to be reviewing it throughout this video, so I'm kind of providing an explanation for possibly some of the unusual angles. So as you can see, when we move the figure here, we do have a rather flexible joint in the very middle where it does wobble from side to side, meaning structurally the entire figure kind of needs to be balanced in the right way, otherwise it will tend to kind of fall like that to one side. But not only the midsection, the entire structure of the figure overall does seem more flexible. So we have the arms which can bend a lot more compared to the initial release, which is brilliant for posability, although as you can see the K1 robot does tend to bend over a little bit to kind of make it look like he's sulking, and equally because of that structure problem the legs do find it a little bit difficult to hold the entirety of the figure, and certainly to make it look like the figure is actually walking. Coming in to take a closer look at the costume, this is absolutely brilliant. Very bulky, very robotic, very cool indeed. I imagine as a kid I would absolutely love this figure. You can kind of see what I was referring to before, where the robot does ever so slightly bend over to the side in order to support the rest of the figure, but generally overall from a design perspective there's not too much to talk about here. We have a few ridge sections and a few little panels sticking out, but other than that it's not too exciting. Although we do have a very small wash on the lower section in between these little square pieces here, which does kind of draw a bit of attention to them, which is nice. And then flipping around to the back, we do also have a rather unexpected little change where K1 now has some company information stamped on his arse, which was not present on the initial release, no doubt because this is now being sold as a product in its own right as opposed to being a collect and build. Without a doubt, the design of K1 is probably one of the most effective within the entirety of Doctor Who history because it is so basic yet so effective. Pretty much every Doctor Who fan probably knows who K1 is because the design stands out so visibly and is incredibly eye-catching. The very centre of the costume is probably where the design is at its most complex, but even then it is rather simplistic. The centre of the chest unit has lots of different dials and nuts affixed to it, so as we can see here these have been sculpted in a rather lovely matte black plastic, and then in the very centre we have this rather angular silver section complete with translucent tubes running around the side. In the initial 2008 release, of course, these two bands of colour which are featured on either sides of the shoulders were of course a rather stark vibrant red. This has now been switched out for a metallic pink to make it look very shiny, very much like how it did within the TV serial. I really like how the sculpt captures the various components within the costume. In particular, we have the shoulder pad sections there which have been excellently sculpted with these individual panels curving round, and then of course this circular section keeping all of those pieces together. Imagine this retracting within the story itself and moving as K1 walks. In the context of the actual colour palette for this figure, probably the biggest change can be seen around the neck section, where basically the rest of this neck piece here on the original 2008 release was simply a solid silver, very much like the rest of the figure's body. But as you can tell, we have this rather light grey, which has been used, to be honest, I think to my natural eye, it looks like a very, very light green. So this can be seen going all the way around here. We also have a silver trim running around the top, which can also be seen at the midpoint here, and then it can also lead around to the back as well. Now I'm guessing that this is accurate to what is seen within the story. Unfortunately, mine does have a little bit of paint leak where the green or grey doesn't really row up all the way to the line, but it's really nice to see this change, especially if you have the original version, just for the sake of variety. The tank piece has been replicated using a transparent plastic, and this rather neatly connects into the neck section, with the top pieces painted silver. The back of the shoulders do feature a few more nuts and bolts or this little tap looking piece here, although these haven't been painted and are just the standard silver. Hopping round to the opposite side of the tank, we have a rather unusual, obscure change, where we have these two little nuts. However, on the initial release, the bottom nut was in fact painted matte black, and the top one was silver. This time, it is the other way around. I'm guessing that this is presumably more accurate, although a very, very nitpicky detail, but I'm glad they've done it nevertheless. The head sculpt for K1 is an excellent combination of plastics, ranging from the solid painted silver sections as well as the transparent pink there at the very top. Also, the sculpt itself is excellently layered. I love the way that we have the protruding nose in the very centre, but also this circular beam coming around the very middle. One of the most notable differences with this version of K1 is that this lower section here of mesh has now been painted black as opposed to being a block silver. I believe that this is more accurate to what is seen within the actual story. However, to be honest, I just like it because it divides the silver up a little bit. It makes the head look a bit more exciting. The back of the head has been simply painted in a standard silver. When this set was released, it became apparent that there appears to be two different versions of K1 available, being a light pink version, which is the one here, and a vibrant red, which is more similar to that of the 2008 version. I don't know if this has actually been confirmed, if it was intentional or not. Perhaps it's just down to the different wash that is used underneath the plastic, or even the plastic that has actually been used. For the sake of variety, I certainly recommend going into store and getting the more pinky one, especially if you have the 2008 release, because it just makes this version a bit more different and exciting. K1's arms are on a ball joint, so can move everywhere, which is great for posability, and once again these are just silver. There's no wash applied over the top of this or anything like that. The right hand claw is pretty much exactly the same to the initial release. Apparently the paint has changed this time round to avoid it being chipped off, which I must admit from what I can remember was not a problem that I had with my initial version, but apparently some did, so it's nice to see that's been changed for those of you that have scratched paint on your initial K1 figure. An absolutely brilliant attention to detail is that one of the claws has in fact received a brand new sculpt. Visibly, at least face on, it looks very, very similar to the initial release, retaining the same shape. However, as we tilt it around to the side ever so slightly, you can see that this is in fact much thinner compared to the claw that we've just taken a look at over here, being the same as the initial release. Now, this is in fact accurate to what is seen within the TV story, as well as making it easier to hold the little accessory. Now, one of the downsides of this thinner claw is that overall it does tend to bend a little bit, so a little bit of warm water might bend it back into place, although I've tried this and it does seem to be bending back into the position that it was kind of trapped in the box, which is a little bit of a shame. The legs of K1 continue that usual angular design, including a few smaller details of this rather nice ridged section at the top of the leg there, as well as around the knee. This has been given a little bit of a black wash just to emphasise that detailing a bit more. Same can be said for the bottom of the legs, nothing really too much to talk about here. As you can see, this is quite a small sculpt, therefore it does have a lot of weight to hold up above it, which is probably one of the main reasons why this figure struggles to stand up most of the time. You guessed it, the feet of K1 are once again a lovely shiny silver. This is pretty much exactly the same to the original release, where you have the main core shoe there, and then we have this piece here which kind of can move up and down to create the impression that K1 is walking. I'm going to be picky because I know that a lot of people will be complimenting this set, and I do love it, although it would have been nice to maybe have a brown wash applied to the bottom of K1's foot to kind of replicate the dirt of the surface that K1 has walked along within the story, maybe even a grass stain or two in there as well. K1 does also come with a small gun accessory, which I can recall back in the day was packaged alongside Magnus Greel and Mr. Sin. Ah, memories. This is a really nice sculpt. Of course, you have generally overall silver with lots of rather intricate sculpting details, including this little nozzle at the end. And then there has been the occasional lovely golden paint application, very precisely painted even at the end here as well. Gun fits snugly into K1's claw. You can kind of use the gun, in fact, as a walking stick to hold the figure upright a little bit more easily. This can also be positioned quite easily within the Fourth Doctor's hand. So in summary, for the robot collector set exclusive to B&M stores throughout the UK, it is a really good addition to your Doctor Who collection. The Fourth Doctor is an absolutely brilliant variant. Even if you have the original release, I think that this new release justifies a second purchase given how many paint application changes there is on this figure, and it will most certainly stand out on your collection shelf. As for K1, I imagine a lot of people will be very happy to add this variant to their collection, especially given that K1 is such such an iconic creation from the early 4th Doctor era, and once again it features a lot of paint application changes to justify a second one for the shelf. To be honest, I might actually keep this set in its packaging, given that I already have both of these figures on the shelf out of the box. It is a shame that this latest version of K1 does have a few quality control issues when it comes to the overall structure, and it is a shame that the figure does struggle to stand up on occasion depending on what position it is in. But other than that, for paint application, the paint overall is incredibly crisp and detailed. So thank you very much for watching this review. I really hope you have enjoyed it. Do of course stay tuned on the Host Productions for brand new Doctor Who content on a fairly regular basis, including Big Finish audio dramas and much, much more. So thanks for watching, have a nice day, and I shall see you all next time. Bye for now.